This image is a composite of around 10 pictures and took me over 4 hours to edit. In this Photoshop lesson, you will be able to watch along as I create the expansion, the composite, add colors and tones, and just finally mixing in a few textures with different blending modes. I actually forgot to take a background photo for this image, so I'm going to use the clone tool and manually create the expansion myself. I'm going to expand the image by going to Image, then Canvas Size, and now I have white spaces around my picture, and I'm just going to use the clone tool and fill in those white spaces. I put my finger in the middle of the rope to make a bend in the middle, and I'm just going to copy and paste that selection onto the main image. Next, I'm going to copy and paste the model's face and body, minus the legs because we're going to use a different picture for that, and just bring that selection onto the main image. I'm not going to create a layer mask and erase away at the edges of the selection until I have the entire composite in place together on the main image. Another thing that I forgot to do was take pictures of the dress flip, but I did ask the model to pose with one foot extended, which caused the dress to fall in front. So luckily I was able to use that. I'm going to use the paintbrush tool and erase away at her body to make room for the selection we just copied and pasted. And then I'm going to copy and paste the selection where she's pointing her foot. And now that the composite's in place, I'm going to make layer masks on each layer, and I'm just going to erase away at the edges a little bit. And now I'm using the warp tool to kind of align the body parts together. I also want the dress slip to have more detail, so I'm going to add on another selection to give it more flow. After that, I'm going to use a small paintbrush with black on top at a pretty hard level around 85%, and I'm just going to carefully start erasing away at the edges of the selections. It's really important to zoom in really close so you don't make any mistakes, because you don't want to print a picture for your client and realize there are spots that you missed or lines that don't really blend very well together. And finally, to complete the composite, I'm going to use the clone tool to just carefully patch up the gap in the dress. And now I'm just adding on a curve layer. I'm going to brighten up the space around her to kind of make it seem like the moon is glowing her up a little bit. I'm going to add some contrast to the curve light, and then I'm going to go in at 50% with a paintbrush and just brush around the edges so that the selection isn't super bright and that the light kind of blends in well with the background. And now I'm just using the dodge tool and I'm brightening up her feet, and I also just use a burn tool to create a little shadow on the rope where her toes meet the rope. And now I'm just using more curved tones to kind of give a more artistic feel to the pictures and just add some colors and tones. I don't just slap on curved layers to the entire picture. Usually what I'll do is create a layer mask on the curve layer and erase away at certain areas of the picture where I don't want the curve layer to show up. For example, I often like to reduce and soften the highlights of a picture with curves by bringing the right side of the curve layer down, and then I'll make a layer mask and erase away where the curve layer affected the dress and the body, because I don't want to reduce the highlights of those areas. I like the background to have reduced highlights and for the subject to have highlights and contrast so that the subject pops out from the background. And now, as you can see, I'm bringing on some textures onto the image. Sometimes I'll use screen mode and sometimes I'll use soft light, and then I'll darken the texture so that it shows up. And now I'm just bringing in a picture I took of a moon from 3 years ago in Yosemite with a macro lens, and I'm bringing that onto the picture. I just brought on one of my favorite textures and changed the blending mode to screen mode, which really makes the lines of the textures show up. And now I'm going to my white selective color adjustment layers, and I'm making the space around her that originally was bright to a more yellowish color to kind of make it seem like the moon is glowing her up a little bit with a yellow color. Now I'm just adding on a second vignette to the upper half of the picture. I'm also darkening the picture a little bit, and I'm going to erase away the face and body because I don't want the face and body to be darker. I just want the entire background to be. And now I'm just using the dodge tool and I'm brightening up her legs and her feet just a little bit more. This is the final image. Unfortunately, my screen recording got interrupted because my internal hard drive is having some issues. I'm really sorry about that. But the only other changes I made was reducing the redness of the model's skin and lightening up the red colors with the hue saturation tool. Then I added a few selective color adjustment layers where I added more yellow to the white colors to make her dress a more painterly yellowish color. And then I also added more yellow to the blues and cyan colors of the image so that the picture wasn't so bluish looking. I hope I was able to teach you a few new things. Please feel free to imitate this exact picture if it helps you learn Photoshop. If you have any questions, just add me as a friend and message me on Facebook. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a very creative week.